Thanks, Sean. Before we go to any questions, I just wanted to make an opening remark. Now that it's official and Seattle has unveiled their selections, in a lot of ways, the last 24 hours have been very, very difficult, very emotional. We don't have enough time here today to talk about what Mark Giordano has meant, not only to this team, but to our community, to his teammates, to the fans, myself personally, that have been around him. He's been a tremendous leader, is a tremendous leader. I've said on countless occasions, to me, has been the moral compass of this team for a long time. And him moving on is closing it's a closing of a really important chapter in this franchise. And I thank him, his wife Lauren, Jack and Reese, for everything that they've done. You people that have had the chance to interview him and work with him, and see what he pours his heart and soul into everything every day, has done that in this organization, this community. And this is part of the cruel side of the business of hockey. And I wish him nothing but the very, very best. And we miss him. And Seattle got a great man today. So with that, we will answer any questions you got.
Just a reminder to please use the raise your hand function. We'll get started with Ryan Pike.
Hey, Brad. I'm just curious, from your perspective, how did this whole process unfold in terms of when did you get an indication of Mark's claiming by Seattle? And I guess what was the conversation like when you talked to Mark about it?
Well, this process, Ryan's been going on for a year. So I know for you guys, it's been the last 48 hours that it's probably been top of mind. We've been knowing Seattle's coming in the league for 2 years, over 2 years. We've known what the rules are. So you go through this process, and you have to separate emotion and all those types of things. We were, officially informed last night. I spoke with Mark, the last week, probably every few hours, and, kept him up to speed throughout this process. So lots of communication over, Mark and I have lots of dialogue anyhow. And then over the last week, there's been lots of it.
Thank you.
We'll go to Danny Austin next.
Thanks. Brad, in terms of Mark's impact on this franchise, I mean, we often think of sort of the great captains sort of leading teams to Stanley Cups, but this is a guy who took this team through a rebuild and back into, you believing and many people believing that this team was a contender. That takes a special type of player and person. I'm just curious as to how you reflect on just his impact as a captain on this group and on this team's development.
Well, I think talk to anybody that's been around him. To me, the biggest impact Mark's had is on individuals. So talk to teammates, talk to coaches, talk to managers, talk to staff. And I think he's impacted everybody he's been around. So, I've used, since I've been here, my first talk to all of our young players is, when you get to Calgary, you'll see a stall that's got number 5 on it. Watch what he does, and just do that, and you'll be all right. So that's the biggest compliment we've said to it. If you wanted to just to follow somebody and how they, work, how they prepare, how they commit, how they live, follow that. If you come, pretty close, you'll be all right. So I think he's had a big impact on a lot of people.
And then when did you first start having conversations with him about this possibility? I mean, it's something that obviously everyone sort of knew was a possibility, but when did you guys personally talk about it first?
Well, you get through the season, everybody knows the situation. And again, today, for me, last night's a hard night, right? So you don't sleep last night. You talk to Mark. It's the reality. It's, maybe the girlfriend's breaking up with you, but at the end of the day, it's not really going to happen. And then all of a sudden it happens, and it feels the shits, right? So you go through that process, and today you got to get back to work, right? You have to move forward, and the franchise continues. We have to move forward here. So we've had lots of discussions. To me, as you go through this process, you always try to keep your players up to speed with what's going on. This is a special person and a unique circumstances. So I want to make sure he was well aware and understood. I mean, that's the other thing. Mark understood the situation. We all understood the situation, and at the end of the day, we were looking at ways for it not to happen. But from an organizational standpoint, you have to make business decisions. Yeah. And when I say that, it's, the position we were in order for this not to happen, I'll say, in order for this not to happen, was just, it was a price that we couldn't pay. And, so it's, it's tough, but, in terms of the communication with Mark, it was consistent and constant throughout the process.
Thank you very much.
We'll go to Eric Francis next.
Brad, did you try real hard? I know there weren't a lot of options out there, but did you try real hard to trade him, to get something for him before you submitted your list?
Yeah, Eric, I'm not going to go into that. I mean, I know it's easy to say, well, if you lose him for, look around the league, there wasn't a lot of deals. I mean, you take all that part out of it, there's a big cap hit. There's people that have to absorb that. Teams are at different stages of their development. Some teams that were at certain stages of development to absorb a cap hit, it just did. Those options weren't available.
And the price never changed in terms of what Seattle was looking for the toll?
If there was a way that we could have done it within reason, I think there's those conversations should be kept behind closed doors. If there was a way within means that made sense for this not to happen, we certainly would have pursued it.
Okay, we'll go to Pat Steinberg next.
Brad, Gio led your team in ice time last year. We know how huge a force he's been on the ice, and obviously as the captain in the locker room. Can you talk about what you lose from your team on off the ice without him in the fold anymore?
Oh, I think anybody that follows the team understands that. Gio's a really good player. As you said, absorbs a lot of ice time, both sides of special teams. So there's you look at the board yesterday, there's a hole there today. But we're not going to fold the franchise. We're going to, now we got to find ways to move forward and, look at avenues to, I'm not going to say replace them, because you don't replace that personality, but there's opportunities for people within the organization. You look outside the organization. So now we've got to absorb it. The cruel reality of pro sport is, whether it be injury, whether it be player movement, it opens the door for somebody else. And the league, everybody lost a player today. Some are more impactful on their teams than others, but the league moves forward, and you have to move forward too. And so that's our plan. Our plan is to move forward and find ways collectively to fill that void in. Like I said, we've got players that have yet to meet a player who wants less of a role. So we've got players that are looking for bigger roles. We'll look internally, we'll look externally to see how we change and absorb, this loss.
We'll go to Global Calgary next.
Hey Brad, it's Cami here. You mentioned earlier that everybody kind of has that story about Gio being Gio. For me, he's the only NHL player who was ever offered to carry the heavy cameras or the gear when we're out in the field at golf or anything. But for you, I was wondering if there's a particular memory, a thing he said or did on or off the ice that just sticks with you as something that sums up who Mark is.
Yeah, there's a lot, Cami. He's a special guy. We got a special relationship. Just even during this process, lots of late night talks. The biggest thing for I always think with Gio is he saw the good in everything and everyone, right? Like he, even when we were going through tough times, he always believed, right? He always believed better days were ahead, or, probably the funniest story. Well, there's lots, like, I don't know if the right forum to talk about it, but my first year, Gio got hurt right before the trade deadline. And it was right before the trade deadline. And so we were trying to mask it a little bit of saying, he wasn't that hurt. So he got hurt in Jersey, and the next night, Gio, we were talking, how do we keep the prices low so that everybody doesn't know we need a defenseman for the trade deadline? And we talked about him taking warm up. And so everybody thought Gio was out for this length of time. So Gio goes out to take warm up, and he says, I think they're going to know I'm hurt. And I said, no, you just skate around a little bit. And then he took a shot, and it just sort of dribbled down the ice, and he came off, and he says, yeah, they knew I could, obviously they know I'm hurt. And I said, no, your shot didn't look any different than it normally does. So, there's lots of stories. Everybody's got one, or more than Gio, going through this process, just tells you about the guy where, he's telling me, you got to make the smart play here. Remember, I'm 38 years old. Don't, as much as he's dying to stay here, he looks at it through what is the long-term interest of the club. So totally selfless all the time. And, lots of stories like that, Cami.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll go back to Ryan Pike.
Brad, you've mentioned sort of, throughout this process, I guess you sort of have to examine your club and sort of, figure out where your reserve list is at and where the club is at in its progression. How do you feel, I guess, about the club after going through this process as you're heading towards the entry draft?
After going through the expansion process?
Yeah, as I imagine, you probably, every spot on the projection list, you probably needed to rationalize why you're protecting one player over another. And I guess, you've been through this twice. How do you feel your team is progressing so far?
Well, you go through the process of, again, you evaluate each player where they're at. Where our team sits today. You lose a player like this, we're July, whatever we are, we're July 21st. We can't necessarily react tomorrow to fill this void. We'll continue to look at ways that we can help ourselves get better. That's the job here. And it may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week. It may take us a little bit of time here, but you're constantly looking at how you can evolve your team. Like I said, everybody lost a player through this process today. You look at every alternative, like I said, this isn't something we woke up today and said, well, we got to put in a list. We're looking at every certain option. you have two options to go through. You can put 7-3-1, 7 forwards, 3 defense, one goaltender. You can do 8 skaters and a goaltender. As difficult and as hard as this is, we felt, and again, I'm the one that made the decision, right? So this is, we can talk about how difficult it is losing Gio, and it is, but I had to, at the end of the day, the buck stops here, that I made that decision. And we move forward.
And I guess just a quick follow-up. I know, it's a flat cap for the foreseeable future, and this is probably not the way you hope to gain it, but does it sort of help you breathe a little bit in the offseason, knowing you have a bit more cap room than you did 24 hours ago?
Having cap space, people, I think, it's an important tool in the cap world. It's very, very valuable. It's how you spend it is also as valuable. So we'll continue to look at what opportunities that we can do to use this space that's available to us now. And that's the reality of it. It's hard. Like you make a good point. Certainly you wish you come about that space in a different manner, but this is where we are today. And now it's our job, our collective job in the hockey department, to figure how we move forward.
Okay, we'll go to Pat Steinberg.
Brad, I without telling tales out of school, how were those conversations with Gio? How did he take it, knowing that this is the only organization he's played for in his NHL career?
Well, I mean, like I said, the process was a long one in terms of talking about what could happen and what we're trying to do and what we can't do, and but you're real transparent with the player. Like this isn't just any player, and you try to do that with any player in this situation. But certainly, this is unique circumstances with a unique guy. He was awesome through the process. Some days he was consoling me. Some days I'd console him. That went back and forth. Probably at the real, like I said, when it becomes a reality, there's a lot of emotion, right? Like you can prepare to jump off the cliff it's different when you're in the middle of the air, right? You get a different feeling when it's actually happening. So lots of a range of emotions. The other part of this, it's a sad day in Gio leaving, and what we talked about too is, as sad it is, it's exciting for him. You'll get through that. There's exciting, change for him. In some ways, will be real good. It's a new adventure. But it's tough. It certainly was tough when we were going through the process.
Okay, final question to Solemn.
Hi, Brad. Looking ahead now, it seems like it'll be a pretty hectic few days coming up. A couple of people I've talked to have said they're surprised as to the number of names out there on the trade market, that this is a bit unprecedented. Have you found that the trade market or those conversations are different this year than in previous years? And do you anticipate the Flames to be a busy team in the coming days here?
Well, a few things. It is busy, Solemn, probably different than most because we just had a expansion draft, so that doesn't happen every year, so that adds a new layer and a new wrinkle and a new set of circumstances where there was some availability of players. People got to protect a certain amount of players. There's a certain amount of players in the market. There was a bit of a trade deadline to a certain extent prior to the trade freeze, where teams had some open slots to take players. So that activity is different. The communication and the activity level, or the volume of calls and that stuff is as you normally would be. Caution everybody, the rumor mills and all that stuff, those you guys tweet faster these days, so it's just, there's lots more names out there than the year past, but it's busy like it always is, right? You've got a draft, you've got free agency, and then all that was preceded by an expansion draft. So I think there's lots going on in the league, and I anticipate it to be an active week. And for your final part, how active are the Flames going to be? I don't know. We're going to try to help our team, and that's all. I don't know. We'll work at it, and we'll see where we get to.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Brad. Our next media availability will be Friday night at the conclusion of the opening round. Thanks very much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.